Constitution doesn't give men the authority around the world. We ought to mind our own business is what we need to
do. Welcome to Voices of Reason, Iowa's premier liberty podcast.
Find us online at voicesofreason.org or facebook.com/tasteofliberty.
We hope you enjoy the show, everybody, so stay tuned.
I remember black skies, the lightning all around me.
Welcome to Voices of Reason. It's been a few months since we last convened. This will be our first episode of our second season. I'm Tony Seliquini.
I'm Dusty Juhl.
And I'm Gabe Lanz.
And we're excited to be back in the studio. In our last episode, we covered the whistleblowers. Edward Snowden had come out to tell us all about how the NSA had been spying on us. Of course, here at Voices of Reason, we've been telling you about a lot of that already.
And we were talking about Syria the last time we convened, and shortly before that, we were talking about the extension or the elimination, the virtual elimination of the debt limit.
As always, in Voices of Reason fashion, we kept you up to date on all the latest on the expansion of the police state, tyranny, and the ever-increasing surveillance state.
And wouldn't you know it, when we reconvene again, all of these same issues that we talked about 3-4 months ago are still hot topics now.
Imagine that.
Well, we said, it probably is going to be about 4 or 5 months before the was going to hit the fan, and here it is, just before November. We've got legislators in Congress about to raise the debt ceiling again. Of course, we have some steadfast congressmen that don't want that to happen. Harry Reid wants to increase the debt ceiling by $1 trillion.
$1 trillion.
So that may be good for another year and or maybe not quite another year.
But the thing is, if we're actually spending so much money that we are going into so much debt that we have to raise our so-called ceiling, why aren't we taking any steps to
cut spending?
But we'll get into that. But we just really want to say it's good to be back in the studio, and this new season is bound to be bringing you a whole lot more than even last season. We've got a few changes that we're bringing to the table. We're going to be bringing in a new segment called What's Bugging Gabe? We've got the lightning round's actually going to be more of a lightning round. And
we're going to be bringing you more of our content on YouTube.
And we are also going to be doing more interviews. But one thing that we'd like from you is some more feedback. And if you guys could, please visit our website at www.voicesofreason.org.
Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tasteofliberty.
Follow us on Twitter at tastetheliberty.
And just send us an email at comments@voicesofreason.org.
We want to know you're out there listening. We want to hear your feedback, and we want your critiques. So let us know what's up. Say hi or give us your hate mail. We don't care. We just want to hear from you.
And we love you. We appreciate all of your support the last 18 months. Hard to believe it's been 18 months, but 38 episodes later, and here we are with our 39th episode. And nothing has slowed down.
No, and absolutely not. And Gabe, speaking of what's up, this weekend you have an event coming up, don't you?
Yes, actually I do. So why don't we cue the music and get to the announcements? I myself, Gabe Lanz, will be holding a Iowa meet and greet, but not just myself. Fellow Oathkeepers will be there. October 12th, 2013 at Grays Lake Park here in Des Moines. That is at 2101 Fleur Drive, Des Moines, Iowa. We'll be starting to show up around 3:30. I don't get off work because I'm a blue-collar working man until about 4. I will be there shortly after. So, show up. Look for their fellow Oathkeepers. We will be visible, and we're going to have a good time and hopefully get some more serious structural changes and official leaders set up for the different congressional districts here in the state, so we have more points of contact other than just myself and Jesse Klein, the co-chair. And also we're going to be talking about the civilization preservation teams that has recently gone active through Oathkeepers. And just a lot of exciting things. So if you are an Oathkeeper, You want to know more about Oathkeepers, and you have the same ideals as honoring the oath that you took or that military members take to protect and defend the Constitution, come show up. We'd love to have you.
And 1 week after that, on Saturday, October 19th, at the Iowa State Capitol West Lawn, the 8th Annual Iowa Minutemen Rally and Forum on Illegal Immigration is taking place. I will be speaking on that day. I'm not sure what time between 1 and 6 that I'll be scheduled to speak, but show up. It should be very informative just to talk about the current state of illegal immigration and the effect that it's having on the country and what policies government is applying to try to resolve a lot of the problems that we're dealing with.
And the following week, on Friday, October 25th, the Iowa GOP will be hosting their annual Reagan dinner featuring Senator Ted Cruz. That'll be at the Community Choice Credit Union Convention Center from 6 to 8 p.m. Tickets are $100, but there are several available discount codes that'll get you 25% off.
And you can find those codes on our website, or you can visit our Facebook page to get those codes. Save you $25.
And Senator Ted Cruz's partner in crime will be coming to Iowa as well. Senator Mike Lee will be the keynote speaker for the Iowa Faith and Freedom Fall event, or Fall Kickoff, on Saturday, November 9th at the Paul R. Knapp Learning Center at the Iowa State Fairgrounds. Doors open at 4:30 with dinner at 5 and the program to follow at 6 p.m. I believe tickets for that are $55.
So there's a whole bunch of stuff happening in the near future. We encourage you to get involved, get to these events if you can make them. And remember, the caucus is just around the corner. It's time to start preparing for them. Okay. Break it. And in usual Voices of Reason tradition, we will end our first segment with the quote of the day. Today comes from Mark Steyn. The thug usurpers of the bureaucracy want to send a message. In today's America, everything is the gift of the government and exists only at the government's pleasure, whether it's your health insurance, your religious liberty, or the monument to your fallen comrades.
That is so true.
It's tragic, is what it is. All right, we're going to go and break for our first commercial. When we come back, we will hit our...
New and improved, faster,
Streamlined.
bigger...
Furloughed.
Yeah, that's funny. Lightning round. Furloughed. That's awesome.
We've furloughed all the workers for the lightning rounds. It was going to go a lot faster this week.
Let's go ahead and take us back to one of our first commercials.
It's all so hopeless.
I can't trust anything I see or read anymore.
I deal with constant mental anguish.
I feel like my mind is on fire. Does this sound like you?
Are there moments in your day when you just can't take it anymore?
Restless nights, thinking about what's to come?
Do you have trouble distinguishing fact from fiction?
Are you constantly confused? Unsettled?
Do you feel like your head is going to explode? Or spontaneously combust?
Take a breath. There is hope.
All you have to do is listen.
Voices of Reason. Voices of Reason.
Voices of Reason is a prescription podcast. Consult your physician to see if it's right for you. Voices of Reason is used to treat symptoms of severe disgust and displeasure with one's government.
Voices of Reason may not be for everyone. Side effects of the contents include, but are not limited to,
Sudden urges to arm oneself.
involuntary smiling,
An overwhelming need to hoard gold and silver.
frequent throwing up in one's mouth,
Sudden loss of hair.
paranoia,
Feelings that you are being watched.
immediate desire to question authority,
Feelings of renewed purpose.
physically asserting your rights.
Death.
Okay, and now it's time for the Voices of Reason Lightning Round. Our first article comes from readability.com. Obamacare train wreck continues, October 7th. Since the online Obamacare insurance exchanges opened last week, the government-run healthcare websites have been plagued with problems. The government is currently working to find solutions to the online glitches, but it isn't likely to find many ways to make the process of signing up for government health care more pleasurable for uninsured Americans. White House Press Secretary Jay Carney told reporters on Monday that Obamacare users will now be shuffled into virtual waiting rooms as they attempt to sign up. While Carney contends that the Obamacare websites are crashing because so many Americans are rushing to sign up on government health care exchanges, a Wall Street Journal article notes that hundreds of people have signed up. About 30 million uninsured people live in the states the federal marketplace will serve, including Texas and Florida. So far, web traffic problems are allowing only a small trickle of buyers, said John Gorman, chief executive of Gorman Health Group, an insurance industry consulting firm with clients selling policies on the exchanges. Large insurers have seen enrollment figures totaling in the hundreds each, said Sumit Nijwan, chief executive of Infogix Incorporated, a data integrity firm that works with such insurers as WellPoint Incorporated, Aetna Incorporated, and Signacorp. And after failing miserably to successfully sign up for the healthcare on an exchange last Tuesday, CNN tried again. The result was unsurprising. No go. Meanwhile, the Obamacare Facebook page has been flooded with negative comments. Here are a few of our favorites. I have had my own private policy that I will not be able to afford to keep once the rates triple per the letter I received from Humana. I'm not eligible for affordable coverage on the exchange. I don't qualify for subsidy. I am living documented proof that this is a system that will not work for me. No propaganda here. Bill Johansson says, the wonderful thing about this law, sarcasm, is that it isn't about healthcare at all. It's about the money. This law facilitates the largest transfer of wealth ever. Everyone in the U.S. has had access to health care. Some of us bought insurance. Some folks didn't want insurance. Some folks couldn't afford insurance, but no one is denied health care. With all the community health clinics, Medicaid clinic, and emergency rooms health care has always been available and plentiful. And those that buy insurance have helped subsidize those that didn't. The cluster of a law is all about the money and power that the federal government will take from the producers and dole out to their zoo animal constituents. Well, and then finally, Wendy Oberkirch says, there's no way in hell I will ever sign up for or accept this garbage. Find me. Carol Howard Flights. I don't understand why we couldn't just help those who didn't have insurance. Why does this have to affect everybody? I know, because this is more about socialism than it is about healthcare. Sherry's page. Obama came into office wanting to be and promising to be everyone's knight in shining armor. Well, sometimes your knight in shining armor is really just an asshole in tinfoil. So let's recap. The government has computing power to break almost all encryption systems, snoop on your internet, snoop on your phone, design the internet, have backdoors built into almost all hardware and software available, but cannot support this website. So all in all, I would say that the ACA is a lot less popular than the news tries to make it out to be. It's not working. Flying in the face of facts, it's more expensive than they said it was going to be. It's a lot less user-friendly than what's been out there before. And the individual mandate is simply nothing more than a way to bring more money into the government's hands.
And not only that, Mike Lee sent out a tweet earlier today that I completely agree with. He said, Obamacare, we're now getting a glimpse through this government shutdown of the unaccountable bureaucratic nightmare that is now going to be in charge of our healthcare. They can't pass a freaking federal budget. They can't even figure out how to manage a sequester that isn't even real cuts. But yet they think somehow it's a good idea to put the control of healthcare into their hands.
Oh, and you forgot that the IRS is passing information to the White House that is supposed to be confidential. Just like your healthcare records, right?
Of course. In the second bout of the lightning round, this comes from the Wall Street Journal. Towns and states are ponying up to keep national parks open. The Arizona town of Tusayan on the southern rim of the Grand Canyon has 558 residents and 1,000 hotel rooms. By Saturday, it had $350,000 to reopen the temporarily closed Grand Canyon National Park. The reason we exist is the Grand Canyon National Park. This closure is devastating, said Greg Bryan, Tusayan's mayor and general manager of a Best Western hotel. The town is offering to fund a partial reopening of the park that would allow visitors to drive through on a main road and stop at overlooks. In Wisconsin, officials are keeping 7 federally subsidized state-owned forest, wildlife, and recreation areas open, even after receiving instructions from the Federal Department of the Interior to close them. The state lands depend on federal funds for 18% of their budget, or $701,000 total. I really don't think it's a defiance, but a fulfillment of our obligations, said Kathy Stepp, an official with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, which administers the state's properties. We are doing everything we can with social media, radio outlets, and news to get the word out that we're open. The calls are coming in like crazy. People are planning to come here with camping trips every year, weddings, and even reunions. But the federal government turned down Republican South Dakota Governor Dennis Dugard's offer to keep the Mount Rushmore National Memorial open with state workers. The National Park Service told state officials that it was required to use federal employees, not state employees, at the monument, and that opening Mount Rushmore would set a precedent to open the other federal parks.
Dear God, we can't have that.
It makes sense for the federal government to shut things down because there isn't funding available, but it doesn't make sense to close something because they're trying to make a point, said Tony Van Heusen, a spokesman for the governor. Our offer still stands if there is a change of heart on the part of federal officials. We certainly would be pleased to talk to them if they seemed interested. Federal officials so far have rebuffed offers from Arizona state and local officials to pay for a reopening for at least a portion of the Grand Canyon National Park. We appreciate the generous offers of support and temporary assistance to reopen various individual parks around the country, he said, adding that the service shares in frustration of more than 700,000 people turned away from 401 parks every day, said Park Service spokesman Mike Litterst. So, my thoughts on this is they're national parks, yes, I get that, but they should be called public parks because they're taxpayer funded and they are all paid for by tax money.
And even if it can't be staffed, if you don't have somebody there to go and, give a guided tour and say, hey, this is this and that was that, okay, so what? If somebody still wants to go and visit the park, take a stroll through the woods, why stop them? Why spend the extra money to go and barricade it up and send people there to guard it and keep people from going in? I mean, they're closing off roads. They're closing off. They're actually going out of their way to make it more inconvenient than it has to be.
Right. And not only that, but how much are they spending on the security detail? I mean, we were at the RNC, or at least I was, and Dusty was, and they spent $50 million on security for this event for a week. They had tons of security, don't get me wrong, but I'm sure they have a lot of the same barricades and wire fences and things like that they were using. So even if it's only, say, 5 to 10 guards for 3 weeks with barricades that are wired together, I'm sure still it's going to be a substantial cost versus having a park open that brings in campsite donations to camp at the campsites, things like that, gift shop revenue that comes in from people buying souvenirs, things like that. It doesn't make sense, and the only reasoning behind it is to try and make it hurt.
Yeah, exactly. And when states are willing to fork up the cash to keep them going, the government's refusing them.
Yep.
And that just recently happened in Arizona.
Which, it's crazy because right here in Wisconsin, the federal funds only accounted for 18% of the park budget. That's not even 1/5 of the budget, yet they can close down the park? How is that even logical? There's 82% of the budget funded by the state, but yet the feds can control it. That doesn't quite sit well with me.
No, there's only one answer for this, and that's nullification. They just need to go and just take back their land. Say, hey, you know what's in our state? It's ours.
10th Amendment, baby.
That's it.
Nullify, nullify, nullify. Our third and final article comes to us from Senator Rand Paul's Senate office in a press release issued today, October 9th, 2013, from Washington, D.C. Senator Rand Paul today joined his Republican colleagues on the Senate floor to offer a series of unanimous consent requests, which means that unless anybody objects, whatever these requests happen to be would be accepted. So one single senator can stand up and object, and these requests would have to be considered and debated on the floor. His unanimous consent requests today were to reopen the federal government, including funding for the National Institute of Health, the National Park Services, and the Department of Veteran Affairs. So from Senator Paul, quote, "We have offered," meaning Republicans, "we have offered 13 different compromises today to reopen the government. Can we not end this farce of putting security guards in front of the World War II memorial? My goodness, it's an open park. They spent more money closing it than we spend keeping it open. We spend more money guarding the World War II memorial than we do protecting our ambassador in Libya. It's become a farce. 85% of your government is open. We've offered today to open another 10%. The president says he will not negotiate under pressure. My question is, when will he negotiate? We've had one good thing happen for the American taxpayer in the last 5 years. The bad thing is $7 trillion have been added to your tab, to your kids and your grandkids' tab. One good thing happened, and it happened under duress, and it happened with regard to the debt ceiling. The sequester actually cut the rate of growth of spending. Didn't cut spending, but it's cutting the rate of growth of spending. The sequester happened under duress.
That's sad. That's the one good thing that happened.
Right.
And they say the cupboards are bare. There's nothing left to cut.
Oh, cry me a river, Nancy. The other side loves debt, loves spending. Doesn't care how much your kids or grandkids will have. They don't care. They have rejected every compromise. What we are saying is $7 trillion of debt under President Obama is too much. And I totally concur. In fact, I got a tweet from somebody. I happened to share something from the Heritage Foundation about an article on the debt limit and how many times it had been raised and how much it had gone up. And this guy responds back and says, how many times did George, meaning George W. Bush, how many times did George raise it? Many times more. So I went to the official source. I went to the historical tables about the debt limit posted to the White House website. And this is what I found. The debt limit was raised 7 times under George W. Bush. $5.365 trillion in debt was added in 8 years. Under Obama, we have already raised the debt limit 7 times. We have added $5.379 trillion, and we've done that in less than 5 years.
Wow. At that rate, we're looking at 11 or 12 trillion by the time he's done.
Right.
See, that's over $1 trillion a year.
Right.
And the sequester is not being honored anyway.
And I'm not fudging these numbers. I got it right from the White House website.
It's $1.2 trillion a year, pretty much. That's what we're looking at.
And to add insult to injury, I don't know if you guys have heard, but the president has said that he's not going to negotiate with anybody, and he gave all that to Harry Reid to negotiate. He basically said, I'm not doing it. I will not negotiate under duress, or under pressure, as he put it.
You know what? I just gotta salute Barack Obama. You gotta salute him, but my salute isn't exactly the standard military salute. It's the typical American free bird salute. I'll let you guys contemplate what I mean by that.
Well, I didn't take my oath to the president. I took my oath to the Constitution.
Yep. The oath is to the Constitution.
And although it
not
does say to obey the
government.
president, that only applies to lawful orders.
Lawful orders.
All right, guys. Well, that closes up our lightning round. We're going to go to another commercial here. When we come back, we're going to go and kind of follow through with what we just talked about on Dusty's article, because our discussion today is going to be about the government shutdown, deficit spending, budgets, the ACA, and a lot of other stuff that factors into what's going on right now. Okay, we're going to go to another commercial, another oldie but a goldie. Enjoy. What's up? Hey, man, you thirsty?
Yeah, you know it.
Here, try this.
Wow. That's That's delicious. What is it?
It's Voices of Reason. In a can!
Taste the liberty.
Excellent!
Visit Voices of Reason's website at www.voicesofreason.org.
A Voices of Reason exclusive, What's Bugging Gabe? Where we'll find out what's bugging Gabe.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the first segment of What's Bugging Gabe. Do you want to know what's bugging me, Tony? Dusty, do you want to know what's bugging me?
I'm dying to find out what's bugging you.
I'm not going to let it all out what's bugging me because I have to save the rage for some of the other episodes. But you want to know what's bugging me this week especially? That's just been sitting heavy on my heart. It's stupid, uninformed American citizens that can vote. I've just been stewing on this over the whole freaking week. Sitting here thinking, replaying over and over in my head, the one phrase from Nancy Pelosi. We have to pass it to find out what's in it. Just that sheer thought alone that somebody could support Obamacare after one of the most prominent Democrats in the entire Congress, in government, pushing this bill, could physically come out and say that on the record, and then people would still support it, just absolutely dumbfounds me. How could anybody in their right mind, realizing the monstrosity, how enormous this bill is, and how it's going to tie into every single aspect of your life, how could anybody possibly support that, or at least continue to think it's a good idea? We had to pass it to find out what's in it. 20,000 pages. They have to allow it to be passed into law, become law, before we can sit here and go, oh yeah, so this is what's going to happen. Okay, yeah, that's a great idea. I'm glad we passed this. Oh, it's going to cost you $3,500 on top of what you're paying now already, when it was projected to cost you $2,500 less. Oh, whoops. Well, I guess that's kind of oversight on our part, but we had to pass that in order to find out what was going to happen. So don't blame me. This is just the way DC works. This is Congress. I don't get it. How can Americans possibly allow this to happen when we have the greatest potential in our country to affect our politics through a representative republic? There is no other country on earth where this is a possibility. We have Americans, especially uninformed, stupid American citizens. Yes, the large majority of Americans are ignorant, stupid fools that can vote, which is probably the most dangerous thing they can do. They can carry guns, they can sit there and they can drive a car, they can get drunk and go out and ride motorcycles, they can do whatever they want. But probably the most dangerous thing they can do is vote, because they can elect people like Barack Obama, who can sit there and wage wars in other countries that we're not actually at war with and drop bombs on imaginary enemies, killing innocent people in these foreign countries that we have absolutely no hostilities with, formally anyways. And they can continue to support it. And they give him a Nobel Peace Prize for it. They don't draw any sort of correlation between their actions as voters and what actually happens when they go to the ballot box. They don't draw any correlation between innocent people dying and when they pledge their support to this person, when they went out and door knocked for this person. The blood of these people is directly on their hands. The hardship that is coming from the people through the Affordable Care Act and Obamacare is directly on your hands. You are a stupid, ignorant fool, and it rests solely on you, and I hope you pay dearly for it. And that's what's bugging me.
So what's really on your mind, Gabe?
Wait till next week, you'll find out.
Today is October 9th. It is day 9 of the government quote-unquote shutdown. And as Halloween approaches, just in time for Halloween, we have a poem from our friends up north in Canada that I thought was rather timely.
He dwells in the dark like a blood-sucking ghoul, but Barack Obama is not but a fool. He stamps his feet like a petulant child, as around the world he is laughingly reviled.
On our World War II vets' fear he tried to impart, but our military heroes drove a stake through his heart. Against Barack Obama, no garlic is needed, as the garden of tyranny soon will be weeded.
You'll learn, Barack Obama, the American people will not cower from you like meek little sheeple. Our resolve to defeat you will never soften, so take your fake fangs and head back to your coffin.
So 9 days into this, as you said, so-called government shutdown, more like a slowdown. Actually,
as Senator Paul said earlier, 85% of your government is still on the job.
I think they should call it more of a display of government irrelevancy.
Have you been affected by the shutdown?
Not actually in the slightest, no.
Well, Congressman Bruce Braley has been affected. Why just today he was complaining about the lack of towel service at the congressional gym.
You know, I heard that in the congressional bathrooms, they don't have toilet paper service. No one is there to wipe their butts for them.
travesty.
How do they live?
No, but seriously, I mean, there are ways that we are affected right now. I mean, but it should be worse. That's the point. If all these things are so essential, if all these things are so important, if the government is necessary to have all these jobs, then how come most things are just running just fine?
How essential is our big government? I pulled together some figures on the breakdown of non-essential government employees from our friends at the New York Times and ABC News. NASA, 97% of its employees, 18,134, have been furloughed. The EPA, 94% of its employees, 16,205, have been furloughed. The Department of Education, 94% of its employees, 3,983, have been furloughed. Department of Commerce, 87% of its employees, 46,420, have been furloughed. The Department of Labor, 82% of its employees, 16,304, have been furloughed. And I want to say that the Department of Defense, that isn't listed here, considered 800,000 employees to be non-essential. Or was that the entire government as a whole?
One thing I did hear today, though, that I was actually kind of surprised, the White House, at Obama's specific order, in an effort to save money during the shutdown, instead of purchasing toilet paper, decided to query the National Archives and use the Constitution instead. Just thought I would add that.
Well, I was just going to say, I seriously don't think that we're in such sad shape. I mean, somebody today volunteered to mow the lawn at the Lincoln Memorial. Some guy volunteered, brought his own mower out, and to keep the place looking sharp for all of the nation's veterans that come through and visit their memorial at the Lincoln Memorial and the World War II Memorial nearby, he came out and offered his services to mow the lawn, to do the landscaping, and the Park Service came and, they didn't throw the guy out, but they did ask him to leave.
Right, and which is kind of going back to my point of the display of government irrelevancy. Just because there's not a government-funded service there to do basic mundane tasks such as mow the lawn, provide tour guides, maintain paths through the parks, whatever.
Run the buses like in Detroit.
Run the buses, whatever. In the absence of government,
what will we do?
The private market, like was clearly evidenced in the lightning round, where local towns that thrive off of the tourism through these parks, the states, other private agencies will step up and offer funding to keep them open because they can make money off it as well, and it is in their best interest to keep these things well maintained to draw people in. It just makes sense. So it's a display of government irrelevancy.
Park rangers came forward and said that they'd been instructed to make life as miserable as possible on people. Now, it's obvious to me that these national parks and other federally run places basically they exist for revenue for the government, and if the government's not getting their tax money, they're not going to let anybody use them. It just goes to show that this isn't public anymore.
I was going to say, what paid for these parks in the first place?
Tax money.
Right.
And the thing is if it is public, then it ought not to be taxed in the first place. And if they feel that it's necessary to run these things, well, then break it down and give it back to the states.
Well,
If it's public land, it ought to be open to the public.
right. And I want to know what constitutes or what amount of funding the federal government has to provide in order for a park or a section of land, what have you, to be deemed a federal park or a national park or a national monument, etc. Because in Wisconsin, like we were talking about, only 18% of the budget of the park there was provided by the federal government. 82% / the rest of it was provided by the state. But yet the federal government, even they control less than 1/5 of the entire money going into that park, but they can control whether it's open or closed and force people out of it.
And this is all legislation that was passed. People say that, well, it's not necessary to go and keep checking all legislation if it's not constitutional. Well, one day, like it is happening now, it's going to bite you in the butt. Because back when those laws were passed, there were probably watchdogs out there saying you can't do that. That's against the Constitution. And people were like, shut up. It's not that big of a deal. Just go back to go.
Go back to sleep.
Go back to sleep. Go to sleep. Because, these watchdogs were the ones that were paying attention in the first place, just like we've been talking about all these other things, NDAA and the rest. We're trying to tell people this is unconstitutional. This is going to bite us back in the butt. Because at some point in time, to answer your question, Gabe, somebody wrote legislation that said, whereupon, after this date, this park is now going to be controlled and run by this department of the federal government, and they shall have blah, 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 blah. But, we're talking about the government shutdown. Let's talk about how this all got together in the first place. We had a problem back right before October. We hit the debt ceiling. We ran out of money again. We could not borrow anymore.
The debt clock. Now, granted, if you go to the U.S. debt clock online, the numbers continue to ratchet up, and yet the report from the Department of the Treasury says that we've been stuck at the same number for weeks and weeks and weeks, and yet the debt clock continues to ratchet up as we approach the supposed mid-October or like 1st of November deadline. Otherwise, we face default.
Default. Is it possible for this country to default so long as they are printing more money?
You mean, is it possible for us to default when we're infinitely solvent?
Is it possible for us to default when we are bringing in over $200 billion in tax revenue a month? I mean, with the shutdown, did the government stop collecting taxes?
No, they did not.
I'm still having taxes taken out of my paycheck. How about you?
Yep.
And further, most all workers, federal employees who have been furloughed are going to receive their pay retroactively, so that still costs.
I want to repeat that for all of our listeners out there that don't follow this and don't understand this. There have been, in my lifetime, 17 government shutdowns, which is an average of one every other year. and in every case, every case, there has been a provision for back pay for every furloughed government employee. In other words, there are some federal workers that will show up to work without the guarantee of being paid because they know that that back pay provision is going to be approved and they're going to get paid for that time. Meanwhile, there's others that are sitting at home, not working, knowing that they're still going to get paid. Yep. So they're getting a paid vacation.
Even if they physically did nothing, they will still be reimbursed for the time that they should have been working.
And while I hit back against those furloughed workers who didn't choose to be furloughed and out of work, well, they chose to work for an unstable entity that is $17 trillion in debt.
Yeah. If you don't want to be subject to the whims of budgetary problems, you probably shouldn't be working for like Dusty said, an entity that is $17 trillion in the red or in debt.
But on the other side of the coin, we have a lot of congressmen and senators who are participating in the shutdown theater who are requesting that their pay be withheld. Well, as we have discussed before, it's illegal to change the pay that the Congress and the Senate receive during their session, during their term. You can't stop it because they didn't pass a budget. You can't have it withheld as they're doing. But the same back pay provisions will apply. I mean, as soon as they have passed appropriations, those congressmen and those senators who are having their pay withheld will see every dime.
It's dog and pony. And then you hear about the ones that say they're going to give it to charity or they're going to do this. Well, it's just a tax write-off.
Well,
but, I mean, it's still commendable. It's still commendable. But let's just face it. Honestly, let's not go and pick and choose sides because, we're nonpartisan here. We look at people on the individual basis. We tackle the issues, not the party line. And everybody in Congress who is not for cutting spending is holding us hostage to pass other bills, other legislation. I mean, that's what happened. We had Affordable Care Act again. They said that, that we wanted a provision to go and delay it for a year. They said no.
We can't do that because it was ready to go.
Obviously. We'll get into that. But right now, I mean, everybody in Congress should be ashamed of themselves because it's their job to make sure that a budget gets passed.
A budget.
They can't even get a budget.
Due by October 1st, required by law, every October 1st. It's a statutory requirement, and yet all we ever get out of the Senate
are excuses.
And Harry Reid is a series of continuing resolutions. And the problem with those, they never, ever cut spending. In fact, Senator Grassley pointed out that even the resolutions being spread around or pushed through the Senate didn't comply with the sequester, that every one of them spent more money than was allowed under the sequester.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see that since Obama took office, they've proposed budgets, they've proposed them, they've submitted them to be voted on, and what has happened? Every single one of them has been voted against on a bipartisan basis unanimously.
And the Democrats as a whole, they largely want to oppose this sort of piecemeal approach that the Republicans have taken to kind of cherry pick and to fund the national parks and to fund Veterans Affairs, or to make sure that our fallen soldiers who have died overseas in Afghanistan, there were 4 or 5 over the weekend.
17.
There were 17 this weekend?
In the last week.
In
there
the
were
last
17
week.
that were denied death benefits. The families were.
And the death benefits amount to $100,000 that they should get immediately to help pay for a trip to visit the burial.
See the caskets come off
the plane.
Flag-draped caskets come off the plane. There was, not to detract and get off subject, but ladies and gentlemen, in the last week in Afghanistan, where we've been at war for over a decade, there were 17 members of the United States military killed. Why are we still there? Why are we still risking our soldiers' lives? We're risking their lives for what? In 17 in a week? Just to have their deaths and their sacrifices made into a political leverage, one way or the other, for a budget debate, for the most basic tenet of Congress? How absolutely shameful and disgraceful is just the sheer notion of that scenario.
And just a few weeks ago, as I've seen on some internet memes, we thought we had enough money to go to war in Syria. And here we can't even pay death benefits for those that have paid the ultimate price in service to their country.
Nope,
but we can still go and give Egypt foreign aid. We can still give weapons to Syrian rebels. We can still...
No, not just Syrian rebels. Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda the same people we're fighting that are killing the 17 soldiers in Afghanistan.
You want to talk about spending money? We posted on our Facebook page an article about the $5 billion in contract money that the Pentagon let the day before the shutdown. In fact, as I read through some of the items, we were buying military articles for other countries. We were buying them for France, and I forget the number of other countries that were involved. But like, why are we spending our defense budget, our defense dollars, for things that the French should be buying themselves?
It's just another way of spending money on foreign aid. I mean, this is just, it's all part of, control.
It has nothing to do with foreign aid. It is all just a backdoor sweetheart deal for U.S. defense contractors.
Okay, there you go. That's what foreign aid usually ends up being.
I mean,
anyway.
we funnel all the money to the country, who then turns around and buys stuff from the defense contractors.
Now, in the interest of being fair, it's not just defense contractors. It is government contractors. Because right before the shutdown, I'm going to now henceforth refer to it as the display of government irrelevancy. There was a $5 million contract awarded for crystal drinking glasses for I forget if it was a government embassy or if it was for the State House. It was for a government agency for crystal drinkware. That eats at me because it's decadence. We're the government. Let's get the finest of the fine. Let's get the absolute most decadent thing we can possibly think of to adorn ourselves with, and let's live this lavish lap of luxury.
It's an aristocracy.
That's exactly what it's become. I mean, they have these, $20,000 a plate fundraisers where they're in these giant banquet halls. All the government buildings, like in the Capitol, they're adorned with hardwood trim that's hand carved and marble floors and marble pillars. And there's something to be said for having quality and good items put into the buildings that are used by the public. But at the same time, when you're buying $5 million worth of crystal drinkware for people that are going to use it for 500 people out of 300 million. Why? What else are they spending millions of dollars on that could be, paper Dixie cups, or they could be plastic Solo cups, or they could be, the dollar run-of-the-mill cookie cutter glass cups that you can buy from Walmart, like I have in my cupboards at home. Why are they spending money on crystal drinkware? Absolutely disgusting, because you don't become a public servant to live in the lap of luxury. You go there to represent the people of the United States, and you go there to do your job. And you do that at a disservice to yourself. It's supposed to be a sacrifice. It's not supposed to be a way to enrich yourself and profit off of it.
So what's bugging Gabe? Crystal drinkware.
That's coming next week.
Oh, wow.
Seriously, though, they can't cut spending, but they're going to be spending $5 million on crystal glassware to be sent overseas to different agencies, embassies. I mean, stop the madness.
I want to go back to those Pentagon contracts real quick to highlight just exactly how those contracts went out in September. There were 17 contracts that were issued or that were let on September 1st. There were 94 contracts that were let on September 30th. Because, oh my God, we got this money. We got to spend it.
And that's what they're going to do every single time as we get close to it. They know there's not going to be a budget. They know there's not going to be any end to spending, but they also know that there's probably going to be a couple weeks in between where they're going to have to slow down their spending. And guess who's not going to wait for that? All the people who are buying up the weapons, all the people who are buying up the whole military-industrial complex, and the banks, and this debt. They love this debt. I mean, what is debt? It's control. But we don't want to go into that right now. I want to talk about some more of the consequences of this government showdown or irrelevancy. And, you may have heard of this on the news. It's pretty important, but especially for me. But Army chaplains, Catholic chaplains, for example, disallowed, actually told they were not permitted to, have mass.
Like a number of parishes in the country, there's not enough Catholic chaplains to go around on military bases, and so they contract that service out. And so those contractors lose access to a military base during the shutdown.
You make a good point, because it's not just the priests that were going to go and perform these services for the troops, but it's for anybody that happens to be a civilian who works at an army base or a military or a federal industry. All the people that do the cafeterias over at the federal buildings, they're out of work now because they're closed down. They're not getting retro pay. You got all the other contractors that do all this work for the federal government. Nobody's talking about them. There was a great meme that we saw earlier. It's like, everybody goes crazy, about 1 million people, get furloughed from the public sector. Everybody goes crazy. Millions of people unemployed in the private sector. Nobody gives.
Oh, no, okay, so everyone here has seen The Dark Knight Rises, the new Batman movie, or the not new, but new old Batman movie. It's got the picture of the Joker, and he's got the famous line in the movie where he says, 100 soldiers die overseas in an IED. Nobody freaks out because it's all part of the plan. But you fill a couple of boats with people, and they have to decide who dies, and everybody suddenly freaks out, or something to that extent.
Oh. I didn't even realize that was actually had anything to do with the movie.
No,
Yeah.
I just thought it was a cool looking picture.
The meme was because it's of the Joker from that scene. And,
I see.
And it's totally relevant because he's saying the exact same thing. Furlough 100,000 or 1 million government workers, and everybody freaks out. But millions of people unemployed in the private market, and nobody says a thing because it's all part of the plan.
And let me tell you, this is what's part of the plan. The administration didn't get their way, so they're making it as difficult, as painful as possible for the American people. This is the first time that I've ever really known of a president, known for a fact, because we're seeing it in front of us, and they're not even denying it, it's just blatant, going out of their way to really make life miserable for American citizens. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. No apologies, nothing. In fact, they're getting direct orders to make life difficult for everybody.
It should be noted that during this display of government irrelevancy, it is the first time during the previous 17 other displays of government irrelevancies that any of the national parks, any of the war memorials, anything have been barricaded or shut down or restricted access to the public. This is 100% intentional and directed by this regime. I'm not even going to call them a cabinet.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have some audio for you from King Reed.
The Supreme Court may have their opinion on Obamacare, but let them come and enforce it.
In fact, think about Thomas Jefferson's attitude toward the federal courts. His argument was the federal courts are part of the problem. I mean, you want me to go and refer my disputes to them? They're part of the problem. The problem is the federal government, and last I checked, the federal courts are part of the federal government. They can't possibly be impartial arbiters.
A conservative group called the 10th Amendment Center has been pushing a lot of the anti-health reform stuff. But they put that in the context of nullification, and they're pushing for other kinds of nullification too.
We have a Federal Health Care Nullification Act to reject not just Obamacare mandates, but the entire idea that the federal government should be involved in health care at all.
Actually, I think of the 10th Amendment now, it's a relic of our failure. And future historians will look back and they'll see all the things that contributed to the demise of American prosperity, and they will say, but all they had to do was follow the 10th Amendment.
What can we do now about the loss of freedom? We could persuade the state governments to defy the feds in areas like health care, where the Constitution gives the federal government zero authority, and to nullify all the laws the Congress has written that are not based on the Constitution.
But one issue that I think that we have to revisit, because the founders understood it, but we have forgotten about it, and that is the principle of nullification.
The federal government said Jefferson cannot have a monopoly on determining what its own powers are, because we all know what it's going to do. It's going to suddenly determine that it has more and more and more and more and more powers. It's going to keep on discovering these vast, untapped reservoirs of power. We all know this. I mean, this has happened.
One of the biggest issues at stake tomorrow is in Ohio, where voters go to the polls to decide on an amendment to the Ohio State Constitution that would effectively block any implementation of the president's health care overhaul.
Power has to counteract power. You can't expect the 10th Amendment to enforce itself. The states have to assert themselves. That's the idea behind state nullification.
Nullification. The movie. Purchase the DVD at 10thamendmentcenter.com/movie.
But if you can help one child who has cancer, why wouldn't you do it?
Listen.
Because that Head Start mom really good.
Why pit one against the other? Why would we want to do that? I have 1,100 people at Nellis Air Force Base that are sitting home. They have a few problems of their own. This is to have someone of your intelligence suggest such a thing. Maybe means you're irresponsible and reckless. Yes.
Why would we want to do that? Asking such a question is reckless and irresponsible. Well, let me lay it out for you, you freaking idiot. For one thing, the National Institute of Health was providing experimental treatments for children with cancer. Why would we want to do that, then care about your 1,100 employees, federal employees sitting at home doing nothing? One, they're going to get back pay for the time that they aren't there. Two, the children who are going to be getting these experimental treatments by the NIH might not have the amount of time that this government display of irrelevancy is going to last in order to receive these treatments to see if it's going to affect their life in order for them to live.
And three, as Dusty pointed out earlier during the break, isn't that their job to prioritize and choose where money will be spent? What things will be voted on? I mean, the question was asked. Either say yes or no.
Yeah. And how is asking that question irresponsible and reckless? How can asking a question be reckless?
Well, let's just show you a little bit about what the Senate could have done.
Well,
a lot of this came
on.
from Breitbart. No, this is it's on the same track. But go ahead.
I don't want to get off on the tangent on this, but the fact that he's comparing people not working to children not receiving what could potentially be life-saving medical treatments that are experimental in nature because there's nothing left, he's comparing these two. Comparing children getting treatments that could save their lives to people who are going to get back pay for the time that they're just sitting at home doing nothing. They're not worried about, hey, am I going to wake up tomorrow? Hey, am I going to wake up tonight coughing up blood out of my lungs? He's comparing these two issues that are totally nowhere on even the same plane of cognitive thought.
I'm not going to lie to you, though. I mean, if it was me, I would say, hey, we're in a government shutdown. You know, I'm sorry, those kids aren't going to get their treatment, but those guys aren't going to get retro pay. And, in fact, I don't even know why I'm sitting here because we're supposed to be shut down, so bye. And, you know, if you're going to have a government shutdown, then you shut it down. You don't pick and choose and say, well, we're just going to have a government slowdown because we're going to keep all these other things going. Well, I mean, the point is, it's like we said before, dog and pony. It's the shutdown theater.
It's a dog and pony show, but when you have people in the Senate, the House of Representatives and the Senate working together to provide individual funding bills for things such as the NIH or the Department of Veteran Affairs, which is a legitimate function of the government, especially veterans benefits, there should be absolutely no contention on a bipartisan basis there whatsoever. Those are things the government should be able to do on a bipartisan basis when it's brought up a single issue at a time, like it has been. But the Senate Democrats, I don't want to make it about Republicans or Democrats, but it is, this time, it literally is the Democrats stonewalling the issue.
Well, what's interesting about it is that they won't cut spending anytime it's offered on the table to cut some spending, but right now they won't spend it. Why is that? Because now it's in the nature of spite. Now it's in the nature of, we're going to make it hurt. You wanted to put us in this place, in this situation? Okay.
You're not going to let us spend what we want? Okay, now we're going to ask for more above the sequester limit that we know you're going to refuse just in order to make you hate us more.
Dusty?
I want to say that that this slowdown in government services,
display of government irrelevancy,
exactly as you said, has resulted in effectively a 36% reduction in government spending. And as I watch the debt clock, you can actually see the rate of spending recede, which is probably the first time that you have seen that in ages. And what that has done is reduce our level of spending to the level that was seen in 2003.
Wow.
Wow.
How accurate is that anyway? Who knows?
It's hard to say, but I've seen those similar figures from multiple outlets, and that's all of 10 years ago.
Regardless of the negative side effects, this government display of irrelevancy...
That just shows how large government's grown.
Well, when you've got... when 85% of the government is still on the job, and you have 800,000 that are furloughed and considered non-essential, 800,000 is 15%. So how large exactly is the federal workforce? I mean... It's insanely huge.
Wow, that really does put it in proportion, doesn't it? In perspective.
I have not done the computation, but when I think about that, it's just insane.
Well, and what really puts it in perspective is we touched on it briefly earlier when you said 86% of XYZ agency, things like that. But the EPA, I think they said that 94% of all employees of the EPA were deemed non-essential or furloughed employees.
I consider that to be low.
But nonetheless, how many government agencies are there? I mean, there's probably hundreds, if not thousands, of agencies that we don't even know exist because they're so spread out into everything. So how many of those agencies that we don't even know about have entire workforces that are completely consisting of non-essential employees? And that begs the question as well, the follow-up question is, why are those employees even government employees functioning as a function of government in the first place if they're non-essential? Why?
On a taxpayer's dime.
Exactly.
I'll tell you why. Because we keep voting in the same people that keep on making crappy legislation, and we do it over and over again. So, like what was bugging you? It's the uninformed, misinformed, and willfully ignorant voter.
Stupid.
That goes out there and votes based on whatever it is that they watched on television or whatever it is they heard from their buddy. They don't go out and do their own research. Nobody seems to even look into the legislation anymore. One step you can take if you happen to know somebody like this is say, hey, you need to go and listen to this show, Voices of Reason. And that's why we're here. Our mission is to promote informed citizenry. We want people to make the right decisions. If people understand what's going on, if they're informed and they know to research candidates when they're up for election and not necessarily to listen to everything that they hear and read in the mainstream media, well, things will change.
Yeah, we really haven't touched on the Affordable Care Act. That's what precipitated the government show of irrelevancy or display of irrelevancy.
That's the new Department of Government Irrelevancy. I'm going to petition to have that added to the Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution.
But unfortunately, lost in this whole discussion about the display of irrelevancy is the fact that the entire Obamacare website, the Health Exchange website, has been proven to be completely unworkable. Well, there's been media outlets that have purposely tried to show you and demonstrate how easy it is for people to sign up, and they either get the runaround or they can't get through the site at all because either there's so much volume that they didn't anticipate that they can't handle all the traffic, or it's just so sloppily built or rushed into production, as I see all the time, that it's not ready to handle anything. It's not ready for prime time, but we can give all kinds of waivers to anybody that asks Obama, all of his friends, all of the unions and big-time companies and donors.
Wait. Caveat onto that statement. Anybody who has enough money to talk to Obama.
Oh, sure.
To lobby Obama.
So we give all these big-time waivers to unions and companies that lobby Obama, but you, the individual, can't get a delay. So we've And actually, what is written into the Affordable Care Act, what is actually written into the law, all of those timetables, that's still the law. And yet Obama has just taken the hand of God. He's just waved his magical hand through the air and said, I'm going to delay these deadlines for businesses to comply.
Right.
But you and I can't get the same thing.
Exactly.
Well, a thought that I've had that I'd like to add to this that I think is pertinent.
That's equality.
Is, okay, so the internet is by no means a new item anymore, right? It's not some newfangled entity that nobody really understands, right?
Yeah, I mean it's been about what 20 years since what's his name created it?
Al Gore.
Al Gore.
Right. So I mean, all joking aside, internet has been around for a long time so far. I mean, not a long time, but in the scheme of things, it's been around for a while. Setting up a website that could potentially service 30 million, 1/10 the American population, which was considered the potential uninsured base of Americans, right?
Right.
30 million people. That's a lot of people. Now, they have to build a website where people can create a user account and they can shop on an exchange for different insurance plans. 14 different insurance plans. I have not done it. I will not do it. But this is their goal. How incompetent do they have to be in this day and age with a almost $4 trillion with a T dollar budget? They've had over 4 years to try and build this website with experts from Google, Amazon, Bing, every other massive website that gets billions of hits a day. Websites that get more traffic in one day than the entire Affordable Care Act or healthcare.gov website will see in a year. How incompetent do they have to be able to to launch their website for one, but then have it absolutely fail and completely fall on its face and have less than 0.5% of all the anticipated people to sign up be able to successfully complete even the most basic prospects of that website? How incompetent do they have to be? That shows you how much thought and how much effort has been put into this entire debacle. The website, Obamacare was passed before they could find out what was in it. They had to pass it to find out what was in it. And now you are seeing the direct action of how retarded and how stupid that whole premise is.
And these people are going to be in charge of your health care.
And yes, these people are going to continue to be in charge of your health care. And just think about that. There's websites that get billions of hits a day, more than the entire Affordable Care Act will get in a year, in one day. But yet, they can't even do the basics of setting up an account and allowing people to shop and see what they qualify for. That is astounding. And it is an absolute, complete failure of leadership from every single level, from the absolute top to the absolute bottom. It is mind-boggling how much of a failure it is. There's nothing else it can possibly be called other than a 100% complete failure.
And just to prove exactly what you're saying right now, since you started your tirade right there, I clicked on Get Started on the healthcare.gov setup, and it's been connecting that entire time.
Yeah. They have, like Jake
It's still sitting there just saying connecting.
We said earlier, they have virtual waiting rooms for people to get in their website. If you had to go to Google and you had to go to a virtual waiting room in order to use the search function, do you think people would still continue to use Google a year from now, let alone a week from now? Just think how absolutely absurd that notion is. And you're going to be forced at some point to go to this because they want, and they've stated over and over and over and over and over again, that single payer healthcare is the goal. So you will eventually be forced to go to healthcare.gov or whatever it transforms into. Yeah, Good job, America. You are what's bugging me, you stupid, ignorant voters. Congratulations. You have destroyed America.
But Gabe, elections have consequences.
The people have spoken.
Yes, the people have.
But the thing that's...
By re-electing President Obama, we, as a people...
You can't get any more ironic than this right now.
The system is down. Well, we've seen this before.
I haven't never tried this. Oh, yeah, well, here. The system is down at the moment. We're working to resolve the issue as soon as possible. Please try again later.
You have 172 days left to enroll, and it'll probably take you 171 to do it.
Yeah, I was thinking, if it was Geico, as easy a caveman could do it. Only thing is by the time you're done, you'd be a Homo sapien,
Oh, wow. And, wow. The arguments against Obamacare could be repeated 100 times, but just the sheer ineptness of everything about that they've rolled out thus far should be as much of an argument against Obamacare as anything else in itself. Obamacare should never have happened, but now that is coming to fruition and you're seeing how absolutely defunct it is, how could you possibly still think this is a good idea? Making a website where people can register and shop is easy. We are 3 people here at Voices of Reason, and we have a website where you can shop for a shirt. And you know what? It works.
And our products are affordable. So if you have an opportunity, check out our website, www.voicesofreason.org/store.html, or just visit our Facebook page and click on photos, and you'll find one there with a shirt on it, and it'll have all your ordering instructions right there.
tasteofliberty.com/affordable shirt act.
That's what it is. I like it. I like it. The ASA.
Yeah. So, I don't know. We could beat a dead horse over and over, but I think the point is clear.
The question the Democrats keep asking over and over again is, why is it that Republicans are hung up on this issue? And I'll answer it very matter of fact, very seriously. Republicans, and the 3 of us sitting here, we understand that once Obamacare takes hold, once it plants roots, it'll be that much harder to rip out. I mean, it's no different than Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And when I see people talking about those things as the models of what we should follow, I can think of nothing else but the fact that all 3 of those are broke. They're all bankrupt. It's trillions and trillions of unfunded liabilities, and yet, what did we get under George W. Bush? The prescription drug plan. We can't afford the liabilities that we have, but we're stupid enough to vote for people who give us more of the same thing. We can't pay for the ones that we have. How are we ever going to be able to afford new ones? And Obamacare, how many times has the cost changed or shifted just since passage of the legislation in 2010? I mean, we are just now implementing, and we're just now to the point where people can sign up, and they still can't do that. And yet, the cost of this is already doubled and tripled. And
so they can't even sign up for an account on the website.
Right, that's step 1.
That is the very first step you have to be able to do. You can't even do that.
That doesn't even get you to the point where you can shop.
So these same people who are directing people to create this website are the same people trying to negotiate the terms of private companies and the government offering healthcare plans that are going to save you money? How on earth does that compute in anybody's brain as a logical, sound decision when every single piece of evidence that could possibly be used from the actual data available proves that it is an absolute lie? It is absolutely impossible for that to happen.
And that actually is the very point that Dusty was making. Here we are. We know this. Everyone ought to realize this. And the reason why they're saying it, and they know it's true too, is because people believe them. And as long as people believe them, they can get these types of things passed. And it's all about the revenue. It's all about the control. Like Dusty said, we're going to plant these seeds, and they're going to take root, and they're going to be so hard to rip out in the future. I mean, look how hard it's going to be to go and phase out Social Security. It's going to take so much time. It's already been ripped out as far as the funds are not there, and yet we're still paying into it.
It is nothing more than the FICA tax.
That's exactly right.
And
this is going to be a new one.
And this is kind of going off on a tangent, but for some reason, people seem to think that every dime that they pay into Social Security, they ought to see. They ought to get every dime back. It's not an investment. It's not even a trust fund, because the entire fund has been rated. Every dime has been rated. When you pay for car insurance, do you expect to see every dime of that money back for the insurance coverage that you had on your vehicle?
I have not ever used it. I've never had a single bit of payback on that.
Right. Social Security is an insurance plan. It is not meant to be an investment.
No, not at all.
However, if we weren't forced to pay into it, I might have a little bit of money to invest.
Right.
And you know what? There was a video that went around a while back. It's called Social Security is a Ponzi scheme. And if you take Social Security for what it is 100% literally the definition of a Ponzi scheme. Look it up.
As is Obamacare.
It is a Ponzi scheme. You are being schemed by your own government at the barrel of a gun that you voted the people into office that passed it. Congratulations, idiot American ignorant fools. Not all of our listeners. I don't mean that at you. I'm directing that at the actual idiot American voters. But don't get complacent, because just because you're informed now doesn't mean that you can become and transform into an idiot American ignorant fool.
And let us warn you, in Minnesota, 2,400 people actually had their information sent out unencrypted. They say that it was retrieved before it could have gone out any further and apparently deleted. But these so-called healthcare navigators that the government has put in place to handle all the information, they don't pass background checks. There are no real standards to be met. I guess as long as you can hunt and peck a key on a keyboard, you've got the job. But
what exactly is a navigator, real quick? What is the navigator's purpose?
The navigator's purpose is to connect you with a plan that's going to work with you, take your information, send it to the insurance company that's going to be providing the services, and so on.
Basically, kind of like
they're a middleman interface.
Kind of like a salesman.
It's a help desk.
Right. So what happens if this person has, say, a criminal record of identity theft, which, and to enroll in Obamacare, you have to give as much information as possible that could be any sort of identity thief's absolute wet dream. It would be their heyday. They would have everything they need in order to take your identity and run and take you for everything you're worth and more.
DNA swab, stool sample.
Yeah, but yet you have to show an ID. You have to pass a background check to get a job for most employers, but yet to be an Obamacare navigator, you don't have to pass E-Verify. Congratulations, idiot, ignorant, American, stupid voters. So going back to what we said earlier about costs through Obamacare rising, one of our listeners and friends, Tony Nizzi, posted this earlier. The Congressional Budget Office reversed their position on Obamacare. Now they're admitting that it will raise healthcare costs even more than the last estimate, which estimated the costs would rise. And so, sure, they're only 3 years late now. So, it's just more wood on the fire of this inferno of evidence that is showing why absolutely every red-blooded American, whether you're Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Independent, or Socialist, if you have any sort of inclination of the continuity of the American economy and the country as a whole, you should be opposed to Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, or whatever name you want to put on it, there's absolutely no reason anybody should have any interest in this continuing. It is 100% absolutely terrible.
And yet you're still going to see people praising it on Facebook. You're going to still be talking to friends and family that are probably going to say they can't wait. But it's going to come to a point where everybody's going to be kicking themselves.
And getting close to the end here, just incentive for anybody out there who does hear this. Steve Dace, radio host here in Iowa, 10:40 a.m. He has a standing challenge, an offer out for $100 to the first person who can show that Obamacare decreased their health care costs. $100. All you got to do is prove that Obamacare would lower your health care costs. So, go check it out if you dare. Just hopefully you have LifeLock or some other sort of identity theft insurance out there because, well, we've already covered that. Go check it out. See if you can make $100, but I wouldn't have much faith if I was you.
All right. Well, please visit our website, www.voicesofreason.org.
Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Taste of Liberty.
And follow us on Twitter at Taste the Liberty.
We appreciate your guys' support.
Tune in next week for another episode of What's Bugging Gabe. I'm sure I'll have another absolutely delicious rant for you to listen to.
And we're still hoping that you'll share with us your feedback. Give us your ideas, your suggestions. If you have any ideas on what you think might make the website better, or some topics that you'd like to hear us discuss, just send them our way. Comments at voicesofreason.org.
That's going to wrap it up for episode 39. We'll talk to you guys later. And until then, stay thirsty, my friends.
Head back to your coffin, Drac Obama.